friends, my name is Akash Acharya. From today I am studying audiobooks of Harry Potter's. So let's start Harry Potter Series 1 Sorcerer's Stones First Chapter. So let's start Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. Chapter 1 The Boy Who Lived. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Private Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you would have to accept to involve in anything strange or mischievous, because they didn't hold with such nonsense. Mr. Dursley was the director of a firm called Grunnings, which made drills. He was a big, beefy man with hardly any neck, although he did have a very large mistake. Mrs. Dursley was thin and blonde and had nearly as twice the usual amount of neck, which came in very useful as she spent so many of her time craning over garden fences, spying on the neighbors. The Dursleys had a small son called Dudley, and in their opinion, there was no finer boy anywhere. The Dursley has everything they want, but they also had a secret, and their greatest fear was that somebody would discover it. They didn't think they could bear if anyone found out about the Potters. Mrs. Dursley was Mrs. Dursley's sister, but they hadn't met for several years. In fact, Mrs. Dursley pretended she didn't have a sister because her sister had good-for-nothing husband, were as un-Dursleys as it possibly to be. The Dursley shuddered to think that the neighbors would say if Potter would arrive in the streets. The Dursleys knew that the Potter had a small son too, but they had never even seen him. This boy was another good reason for keeping the Potters away. They didn't want Dudley mixing with a child like that. When Mr. and Mrs. Dursley woke up on the dull grey Tuesday, our story starts. There was nothing about the cloudy sky outside to suggest that strange and mysterious things would soon be happening all over the country. Mr. Dursley hummed as he picked out his most boring tie for work, and Mrs. Dursley gossiped away happily as he wrestled a screaming Dudley into his high chair. None of them noticed a large tawny owl flutter past the window. At 8:30, Mr. Dursley picked up his briefcase, pecked Mrs. Dursley on the cheek, and tried to kiss Dudley goodbye, but missed, because Dudley was now having a tantrum, and throwing his cereal at the wall. "Little tyke!" shouted Mr. Dursley as he left the house. He got into the car and backed out of number 4's drive. It was on the corner of street that he noticed the first sign of something peculiar. Cat reading a mat. For a second, Mr. Dursley didn't realize what he had seen. Then he jerked his head around to look again. There was a tabby cat standing on the corner of Private Drive, but there wasn't a mat inside. What could he be thinking of? It must have been a trick of light. Mr. Dursley blinked and stared at the cat. It stared back. As Mr. Dursley drove around the corner and up the road, he watched the cat in his mirror. It was now reading the sign that had Private Drive. No! Looking at the sign, cat couldn't read maps or sign. Mr. Dursley gave himself a little shake and put the cat out of his mind. As he drove towards the town, he thought of nothing except a large order of drills he was hoping to get that day. But on the edge, the drills were driven out of his mind when something else. He sat in the usual morning traffic. He couldn't help noticing that there seemed to be a lot of strangely dressed people about. People in clothes. Mr. Dursley couldn't bear people who dressed in funny clothes. The get-ups you saw on young people, He supposed this was some stupid news fashion. He drummed his finger on the steering wheel and his eye huddled on this weirdo standing close by. They were whispering excitedly together. Mr. Dursley was enraged to see that couple of them weren't young at all. Why that man had to be older than he was and wearing an emerald green cloak? The nerve of him. But then it struck Mr. Dursley that this was possibly some silly stunt. These people were obviously collecting for something. Yes, that would be it. The traffic moved on, and a few minutes later, Mr. Dursley arrived in Grunning's parking lot, his mind back on rails. Mr. Dursley always sat with his back to the window in his office on the 9th floor. If he hadn't, he might have found it harder to concentrate on drills that morning. He didn't see the oil swooping past in the broad daylight, though people down in the street did. They pointed and gazed open-mouthed as owl after owl sped overhead. Most of them had never seen an owl even at the night time. Mr. Dursley, however, had a perfect normal owl-free morning. He yelled at 5 different people. He made several important telephone calls and shouted a bit more. He was in very good mood until lunchtime. Across the road to buy himself a bun from Bakery Legs. He had forgotten all about the people in the cloaks until he passed a group of them next to the bakers. He eyed them angrily as he passed. He didn't know why, but he made him uneasy. This bunch were whispering excitedly too, and he couldn't see a single correcting tea. It was on his way back past them, clutching a large donut in a bag. What he caught a few was that they were saying, "The Potters, that's right. What that's I heard. There's some Harry." Mr. Dursley stopped dead, fear flooding him. He looked back at the whisperer as he wanted to say something to them, but thought better of them. He dashed back across the road, hurried up to his office, snapped at his secretly not to disturb him, seized the telephone, and had almost finishing dialing at home number. When he changed his mind, he put the receiver back down the stroke his mistake, thinking, no, he has been putting stupid. Potter hasn't such an unusual name. There were lots of people called Potter who had son called Harry. Come to think of it, he wasn't even sure his nephew was called Harry. He had never even seen the boy. It must have been Harvey or Harold. There was no point in worrying Mrs. Dursley. She always got so upset at any mention of her sister. He didn't blame her. If he had a sister like that, but all the same, those people in the cloaks. He found it a lot harder to concentrate on drills that afternoon. When he left the building at 5 o'clock, he was still so worried that he walked straight into someone's outside door. "Sorry," he grunted as the tiny old man stumbled and almost fell. It was a few seconds before Mr. Dursley realized that the man was wearing a violet cloak. He didn't seem at all upset at being knocked to the ground. On the contrary, he spread into a wide smile, and he said in a squeaky that passer-by, "Stay. Don't be sorry, my dear, for nothing could upset me today. Rejoice, for you know who has gone at last. Even muggles like yourself should be celebrating this happy, happy day." And the old man hugged Mr. Dursley around the middle and walked off. Mr. Dursley stood rooted to the spot. He had been hugged by a complete stranger. He also that he had been called a muggle. Whatever that was, he was rattled. He hurried to his car and set off for home, hoping he was imagining things which he had never hoped before, because he didn't approve of imagination. As he pulled into a drive-away of number 4, the first thing he saw, and it didn't improve his mood, was the tabby cat he had spotted that morning. It was now sitting on his garden wall. He was sure it was the same one. It has the same marking around its eye. "Shoo!" said Mr. Dursley loudly. But the cat didn't move. It just gave up strangely. Was that normal cat behavior? Mr. Dursley wondered. Trying to pull himself together, he let himself onto the hearth. He was still determined not to mention anything to his wife. Mrs. Dursley had a nice, normal day. She told him over dinner all about the Miss next door's problem when her daughter and how Dudley had learned a new word. Will not. Mr. Dursley tried to act normally. When Dudley had been put to bed, he went into the living room in time to catch the last report of evening group. And finally, bird watchers everywhere have reported that the nation's owl had been behaving very unusually today. Although owls normally hunt at night and are hardly ever seen in daylight, there had been hundreds of sightings of these birds flying in every direction since sunrise. Experts are unable to explain why the owls have suddenly changed their sleeping pattern. The newscaster allowed himself a grin. Most mischievous. And now over to Jim McGuffin with the weather. Going to be any more showers of oil tonight, Jim? Well, Ted, said the weatherman, I don't know about anything that, but it's not only owls that have been acting oddly today. Viewers, as far up as Kent, Yorkshire, and Dundee, has been phoning to me tell that instead of rain I promised yesterday, there had been a downpour of shooting star. Perhaps people have been celebrating bonfire night early. It's not until next week. But I can promise a wet night today. Mr. Dursley frozen in armchair. Shooting stars over all Britain. Owl flying by daylight. Mischievous meeting in cloaks all over the place. And a whisper about the Potters. Mrs. Dursley came into the living room carrying 2 cups of tea. It was no good. He had to say something to her. He cleared his throat nervously. Petwina dear, you haven't heard about from your sister lately, have you? As he had expected, Mrs. Dursley looked shocked and angry. After all, they normally pretend they didn't have a sister. No, she said. Why? Funny stuff's on the news. Mr. Dursley mumbled. Owl, shooting star, and there were a lot of funny-looking people in the town today. So, snapped Mr. Dursley. Well, I just thought maybe it was something to do with, her crowd. Mrs. Dursley sipped her tea through pursed lips. Mr. Dursley wondered whether he had dared to tell her name, Potter. He decided he couldn't dare. Instead, he asked casually as he could. Their son. He had been about the Dudley's age now, wouldn't he? I suppose so, said Mr. Dursley stiffly. What's his name again? Howard, isn't it? Harry. Nasty common name, if you ask him. Oh, yes, said Mr. Dursley, his heart sinking horribly. Yes, I quite agree. He didn't say another word on the subject as they went upstairs to bed. While Mrs. Dursley was in a bathroom, Mr. Dursley crept to the bedroom window and peered down the front cut. The cat was still there. It was staring down the private drive as though they were waiting something. Was he imagining things? Could all this have anything to do with Potters? If it did, if he got out there, they were related to a pair of, well, he'd think he couldn't bear it. The Dursley got in the bed. Mrs. Dursley fell asleep quickly, but Mr. Dursley lay awake, turning it all over in his mind. His last comforting thought before he asleep was that even if the Potters were involved, there was no reason for them to come near him and Mrs. Dursley. The Potters knew very well where he and Petwina thought about them and their kind. He couldn't see how the Petwina can get mixed up in anything that might be going on. He yawned and turned over. It couldn't affect him. How very wrong he was. Mr. Dursley has mind drifting into an uneasy sleep, but the cat on the wall outside was showing no sign of sleepiness. It was sitting as still as a statue, its eyes fixed unblinkingly on the far corner of the private drive. It didn't so much as the quiver when a cat door slammed on the next street, nor when two owls swooped overhead. In the fact, it was nearly midnight before the cat moved at all. A man appeared on the corner of the cat. Had been watching, appeared so suddenly and silently, you have thought that he just popped out of the car. The cat still twitched, and its eyes narrowed. Nothing like this man has ever been seen on private drive. He was tall, thin, and very old, judging by the silver of his hair and beard, which were both long enough to tuck into his belt. He was wearing long robes, a purple cloak, and swept to the ground a high-heeled buckled boots. His blue eyes were light, bright, and sparkling behind half-moon spectacles, and his nose was very long and crooked, as though it had been broken at least twice. The man's name was Albus Dumbledore. Let me tell you some extra knowledge of Albus Dumbledore. He is the principal of Hogwarts School, in which Harry Potter will go now. So he is a great man, one of the greatest men. So let's see about him. Albus Dumbledore didn't seem to realize that he had arrived just in a street where everything from his name to his boots was unwelcome. He was busy rummaging in his cloak, looking for something. He did seem to realize he was being watched, because he looked up suddenly at the cat, which was staring at him from the other end of the street. For some reason, the sight of the cat seemed to amuse him. He chuckled and wondered, "I should have known." He found himself he was looking for in his. It seemed to be a silver cigarette lighter. He flicked it open, held it up in the air, and clicked it. The nearest street lamp went out with a little pop. He clicked it again. The next lamp flickered out into the darkness. 12 times he clicked the put outer until the only light left on the whole street were the two tiny pinpricks at this distance, which were the eyes of the cat watching him. If anyone looked out of their windows now, even beady-eyed Mrs. Dursley, they wouldn't be able to see anything that was happening down on the pavement. Dumbledore slipped on the put-outer back into his cloak and sat up down to the street towards number 4, where he sat down on the wall next to the cat. He didn't look at it, but after a moment he spoke it. "Fancy seeing you here, Professor McGonagall." He turned a smile at the tabby, but it has gone. Instead, he was smiling at a rather severe-looking woman who was wearing square glasses, exactly the shape of the marking of the cat that had around its eyes. She too was wearing a cloak, an emerald one. Her black hair was drawn into a tight bun. She looked distinctly ruffled. "How did you know it was me?" "My dear Professor, I have never seen a cat sit so stiffly." "You would be stiff if you were sitting on a brick wall all day," said Mr. McGonagall. "All day, when you could have been celebrating." It had passed a dozen feasts and parties on my way here. Professor McGonagall sniffed angrily. "Oh yes, everyone was celebrating all right," he said impatiently. "You had think they have been more careful, but no. Even the Muggles have noticed something going on. It was on their news." She jerked head back at the Dudley's dark living room window. "I've heard it. Flocks of owls shooting stars. Well, they are not completely stupid. They were bound to notice something." shooting stars now in cake. I will bet that was the Riddler's Diggle. He hadn't much sense. You can't blame them, said Dumbledore gently. We had precious little celebrate for 11 years. I know that, said Professor McGonagall irritably. But that's no reason to lose our heads. On the very day, seemed to have disappeared. At last, the Muggle found out our effort is supposed to be a really as one. It certainly seems so. We have much thankful for. Would you care for a lemon drop? A what? A lemon drop. They are a kind of Muggle sweet I am rather fond of. No, thank you, said Professor McGonagall coldly. As though she didn't think this was the moment of lemon drop. Even if you know who has gone. My dear Professor Shirley, such a sensible person like you can call by his name. All this who nonsense for 11 years. I've been trying to persuade people to call by his proper name, Voldemort. Professor McGonagall flinched, but the Dumbledore who was unsticking 2 lemon drops didn't seem to be noticed. It all gets so confused if we keep saying, you know who. I had never any reason to be frightened of saying Voldemort's name. I know you haven't, said Professor McGonagall, sounding half exasperated, half admiring. But you are different. Everyone knows you are the only one. You know. Oh, all right. Voldemort was frightened of. You flatter me, said Dumbledore. Voldemort has power I will never have. Only because you are too novel to use them. It's lucky it's dark. I haven't blushed so much since Madame Pomfrey told me she liked my new earmuff. Professor McGonagall shot a sharp look at Dumbledore and said the owls were nothing to next to the rumors that they were flying around. You know what they have been saying? About why he is disappeared? About what finally stopped him? It seemed that the Professor McGonagall had reached the point he was most anxious to discuss. The real reason she had been waiting on. A cold hard wall already. For neither as a cat nor as a woman had she fixed. Dumbledore with such a piercing stare as she did now. It was plain that whatever everyone was saying she was not going to believe until Dumbledore told her it was true. Dumbledore, however, was choosing another lemon drop and did not answer. What they were saying is that the last night Voldemort turned on in the Godric's Hollow. He went to find the Potters. The rumor was that Lily and James Potter are dead. Dumbledore bowed his head. Professor McGonagall gasped. Lily and James! I can't believe it! I didn't want to believe it! Oh, Albus! Dumbledore reached out and patted her on the shoulder. I know, he said heavily. Professor McGonagall's voice trembled as she went on. That's not all. They are saying that he tried to kill the Potter's sons, Harry, but he couldn't. He couldn't kill that little boy? No one knows why or how, but they are saying that when he couldn't kill Harry Potter, Voldemort's power somehow broke and that's why he is gone. Dumbledore nodded gloomily. It's true, faltered Professor McGonagall. After all he has done, all people he has killed, he couldn't kill a little boy. It's just astounding. Of all the things he could stop him, In the name of heaven, did Harry survive? We can only guess. We may never, said Dumbledore. We may never know. McGonagall pulled out a lace handkerchief and dabbed at her eye beneath her spectacles. Dumbledore gave a great sniff as he took a golden watch from his pocket and examined it. It was a very odd watch. It had 12 hands, but no numbers. Instead, little planets were now moving around the edge. It must have made sense to Dumbledore, though, because he put it back in the pocket and said, Hagrid is late, I suppose. It was he who told I would be here, by the way. Yes, said Mr. McGonagall. And I don't suppose you are going to tell me why are you here of all places. I have come to bring Harry to his aunt and uncle. They are only family to he was left. You don't mean you can't mean the people who live here? Cried Professor McGonagall, jumping to her feet and pointing at number 4. Dumbledore, you can't. I have been watching them all the day. You can't find those people who are less like us. They have got this son. I saw him kicking his mother all the way up the street, screaming for sweets. Harry Potter, come and live here. It's best place for him, said Dumbledore firmly. His aunt and uncle will be able to explain everything to him when he is older. I have written them a letter. A letter? Repeated Professor McGonagall faintly, sitting back down on the well. Really, Dumbledore? You think you can explain all this in a letter? These people will never understand him. He will be famous, a legend. I wouldn't be surprised if today was known as Harry Potter Day in future. There will be books written about Harry. Every child in our world will know his name. Exactly, said Dumbledore, looking very seriously over the top. It would be enough to turn about any boy's head famous before he can walk and talk. Famous for something he wouldn't even remember. Can't you see how much better off he will be growing away until he is ready to take it? Professor McGonagall opened her mouth, changed her mind, swallowed, and then said, Yes, you are right, of course. But how is the boy getting here, Dumbledore? She eyed his cloak suddenly as she thought he might be hiding Harry underneath it. Hagrid is bringing him. You think it wise to trust Hagrid with something as important as it? I will trust Hagrid said Dumbledore. I am not saying that his heart is in the right place, said McGonagall grudgingly, but you can't pretend he is not careless. He does think. What was that? What was that? A low rumbling sound has broke the silence around. It grew steadily as they looked up and down the street for some sign of a headlight. It swelled to a roar as they both looked up at the sign. He had a huge motorcycle, fell out of air, landed on the road in front of them. If the motorcycle was used, it was nothing to the man sitting astride it. He was almost as tall as twice as a normal man and at least 5 times as wide. He looked simply too big to be allowed, and so wide. Long tangles of bushy black hair and hid most of his face. He had hand of size of trash can lid, and his feet in the leather boots were like baby dolphin. In her vast muscular arm he was holding a bundle of legs. Hagrid, said Dumbledore, sounding relieved. At last. And where did you get that motorcycle? Borrowed it, Professor Dumbledore, sir, said the giant, climbing carefully off the motorcycle. Young Silas Sharp had lent it to me. I have got him, sir. No problem were there? No, sir. House was almost destroyed, but I got him out all right before the mongers started swarming around him. He fell asleep as he was flying over Bristol. Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall bent forward over the bundle of blankets. Instead, just a visible was a baby boy under a tuft of jet black hair. Over his Over his forehead they could see a curiously shaped cut like a bolt of nightlight. "Is that where?" whispered McGonagall. "Yes, he will have that scar forever." "Couldn't you do something about it, Dumbledore?" "Even if I could, I wouldn't. Scars can come in handy. I have one myself above my left knee. That is a perfect map of the London Underground." "Well, give him here, Hagrid. We will better get him over with." Dumbledore took Harry in his arms and turned towards the Dursley house. Could I say goodbye to him, sir?" asked Hagrid. He bent his great shaggy head over the Harry and gave him what must have been a very scratchy, whiskery kiss. Suddenly, Hagrid let out a howl like a wanted dog. "Shh!" hissed Professor McGonagall. "You will wake the Muggle." "Oh, so sorry," sobbed Hagrid, taking out a large spotted handkerchief and burying his face in it. But I can't stand it. Lily and James dead, and poor little Harry off to live with Muggle. Yes, it's all very good, but get a grip on yourself, Hagrid, or we will be found," Professor McGonagall simply whispered, patting Hagrid gingerly on the arm as Dumbledore stepped over the low garden wall and walked to the front door. He led Harry gently on the doorstep, took a letter out of his cloak, tucked it inside Harry's blanket, and then came back to the other two. For a full minute, the three of them stood and looked at the little boy. Hagrid's shoulders shook. Professor McGonagall blinked furiously, and the twinkling lights that usually shone from Dumbledore's eyes seemed to have gone out. "Well," said Dumbledore finally, "that's that we have no business of staying here. We must go and join the celebration." Yeah, in the Hagrid said, very muffled line. "I will be taking Sarashy back by." "Go right, Professor McGonagall," Professor Dumbledore said. Wiping his streaming eyes on his jacket sleeve, Hagrid swung himself onto motorcycle and kicked the engine into life. With a roar, it rose into the air and off onto the Rhine. "I shall see you soon, I expect," Professor McGonagall said, Dumbledore nodding to her. Professor McGonagall blew her nose in reply. Dumbledore turned and walked back down the street. On the corner, he stopped and took out the silver foot outer. He clicked it once and 12 balls of light sped back to the street lamp, so that they were glowing suddenly orange, and he could make out a tabby cat slinking around the corner and other end of the street. He could just see the bundle of blankets on the step of the number 4. "Good luck, Harry," he murmured, and he turned on to hail. With swish of his cloak, he was gone. A breeze ruffled the neat hedges of Private Drive, which lay silent and tidy under the inking sky. The very last place you would accept astonishing things to happen. Harry Potter rolled over inside his blanket without waking up. One small hand closed on the letter beside him as he slept on. Not knowing he was special, not knowing he was famous, not knowing he was woken in a few hours' time by Mrs. Dursley's scream as he opened the front door to put out the milk bottles, nor that he will spend the next few weeks being prodded and pinched by his cousin Dudley. He couldn't think that at this very moment people meeting in secret all over the country were holding up their glasses and saying in hushed voice, "To Harry Potter, the boy who lived." So as you saw that it was like an introduction to our Harry Potter's first book. So The Boy Who Lived. I hope you like it. And do tell me in the comment box that which one of the portion of that chapter you like the most. I hope you will say that. And If you have any hard works to discuss with me, you can tell it in the comment box. Please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you.